you are deserving of happiness. You are deserving of healing. You are deserving of joy.
Whatever your dream is, whatever your passion is, work towards it and put God first. God has to be in your life.
Wanted to use the skills and the training, hopefully to advocate on behalf of the community. I'm able to say that on Chop It Up. Be prepared to keep it real.
Hello and welcome to the Chop It Up podcast, the show that's unfiltered and unapologetic. Each episode will bring you closer to finding your purpose, so be sure to listen all the way through. Now, here's your host, Carmisha Superville.
Welcome back to the Chop It Up podcast. Oh my gosh, you guys, I have missed you. I know we started a little bit late this year, but we are back. And I want to just thank all our listeners. And Happy New Year. I don't care if it's June. It's not June, but I'm still very, very happy that you guys are joining us. And it's just so good to be back in the new year. It's 2025. And yeah, we're just honored to be back with you guys and have new listeners. So, welcome back. As you guys already know, you're listening to the Chop It Up podcast, where real talk meets real business. I am your host, Kamisha Superville, and today we are diving into the world of real estate development with a very special guest who is shaping skylines, building communities, and making bold moves in the industry. So, whether you're an investor, an entrepreneur, or just curious about how major developments comes to life, this episode is packed with insights you won't want to miss. So, let's chop it up. Our special guest is none other than the trailblazer, father, husband, community activist, the amazing Tywan Anthony. Tywan, welcome to Chop It Up. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. I am great. Wow. You know what? That is one heck of an introduction. Listen, if I heard that every day, I'll be on cloud nine. So thank you. Thank you for the intro. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yes, no, I appreciate you as well. Thank you. I know you got a busy schedule. You also just got a recent promotion. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So I want to thank you for just, honoring this time and space with us.
No
So
problem.
for the listeners who don't know, please give them a little brief history of who you are and your background.
Of course. Of course. Thank you. So my name is Tywan Anthony. Currently I am the director of property management and real estate training for NHS New York City. Prior to that, I was with a global firm called Kimco Realty. And basically what I do, I'm a property and asset manager. We dive into real estate, we purchase, we acquire, and we manage and we develop. So that's what we do in short. A little bit of educational background about me. I'm a graduate of Pittsburgh State University. I got my degree in political science with a minor in business there. I also played football there as well. So, in addition to real estate, football is also a huge part of my life and also intermingled with community and politics, financial empowerment, economic empowerment, that sort of stuff. So, that's kind of me in a nutshell. And I think we could get into some other stuff later on, but that's kind of just me in a nutshell. Football, real estate, politics, and community.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Have you always been like that though? Have you always been like community driven, kind of all rounded?
Always. And I think for me, it really started to balloon in college. So when I was going to college, and just like just like most folks, I just wanted to play football. I wanted to go to NFL and run around. That's all I wanted to do. But while I was in college, my father, he said, hey, you should think about taking up politics. So I said, all right, you know what? Yeah, why not? Sounds good. And when I got to the political science classes, I actually loved it, talking about how things are done, history, all those things are important because I'm a firm believer in you have to understand where you came from to understand where you're going, right? So throughout my collegiate career, played football, and even after that, traveled a little bit. I tried to play professionally in a couple different places, and when that was kind of all right, well, what do I do now? I came back to New York, and that in the first community organization that I joined was the NAACP Brooklyn branch. That was the first organization that I ever joined in regards to kind of community and putting it all together. So
Wow, that's amazing. All right, well, In speaking about your journey, let's talk a little bit about your journey. What has led you into real estate development? Now, I have known about your work like way back when, so it's amazing that we're at the crossroads right now. What does that journey look like? What piqued your interest in this space, development, real estate, and so forth?
Perfect. Good question. So I think for me, it all started actually one day at practice, and it's interesting whenever I tell the story. So I was at football practice, and there was a friend of mine who said his father had come to town and bought real estate. And mind you, Pittsburgh State University is in the Midwest, it's in Kansas. So at that time, said his father or family member had came to town and purchased real estate. I was like, who purchased it? Like, how do you do that? So he went down to the court. So I didn't say anything. So after that, I followed up. I went down to the courthouse the next day, and I went down to the county clerk's office, and I said, "Hey, you guys have real estate for sale?" And she looks at me. Right, it was a lady, white lady. She looks at me, and at that time, young in my 20s, I had my braids going. I'm from Brooklyn, out in the Midwest. She probably like, "What this kid with braids wants to know about what we have going on there." So at that time, when I asked her that, she said yes, and she gives me this big book and placed it in front of me. I said, "Well, what is this?" That these are all the people who are, delinquent on their taxes. And that was the journey of how I first purchased my first piece of property. And what I did at that time, all the properties were listed in this book, the addresses. And at that time, iPhones weren't prevalent during then. I ain't gonna tell you how long it was, because then I'm telling my age. But so I took a camcorder, so I had a camcorder, and I went to each house on that list and I recorded the house, the address, just so I could know what it was, because I knew that an auction was coming up a couple months later. So long story short, the auction came up, and I'm excited. I'm nervous, and I think I borrowed a couple dollars from this person, a couple, from my family members, just to go to the auction. I think I had all but like $4,000 at this auction, and I go to the auction, and again, I arrived there, and I'm the only black male there, right? Again, I had my Allen Iverson braids, so I'm chilling. So I'm like, hey, let's go, right? So I get into the courthouse, and then I sit down, and the people up front, they start auctioning off the properties, just like a real live auction. And I'm nervous because I've never done this before, so I'm nervous. I don't know what's going on. People's hands are going up, bidding on stuff. I'm like, again, I'm just a kid from Bed-Stuy. So
Right.
finally, a property came up that I liked, so I put my hand up, and somebody else put their hand up, and I said, I know this property, I like it. I put my hand up too. It went back and forth for a little bit, and they said, sold. And I got, wow, really? Okay. And then next, another property came up. So, long story short, from that, I think I ended that first auction, with three properties. It was a house, and there was two vacant lots. So I come up to the county clerks, and they give me what's called a deed in lieu. That particular county was a tax deed county, not a lien county, meaning that a lot of people look at liens as investment properties, where if you pay the back taxes, then the owner has 2 or 3 years, whatever, to redeem that, and you get 18, 20%, whatever it is. This county happened to be a tax deed, meaning that when I paid from the back taxes, they wrote me a deed to that property. Now, I remember at that time, I took my deeds and I drove down to the property. And I remember just sitting there in front of the property. I'm young, I'm 21, 22, somewhere around there. I'm looking at this property like, damn, I own the property, right? So that was kind of like my first foray into real estate. And from there, I just kind of moved forward.
Wow. How many years ago was that? Like 15 years ago?
If I tell you now, I'm telling you my age, and you try
Child,
to,
we know you grown.
no, that was about, that'd be about maybe 18, maybe anywhere from 15 to 18 years ago. Yeah.
The reason why I asked that, right? Because that's been 18 years ago. And for
15 to
me,
18.
right. But
It's
me
more than
meeting you,
15 side.
okay. Thank you for clarifying, child. No, the reason why I asked that is because you're so passionate about this space, Tayon. Like, you're so passionate. What keeps that drive, that fire burning to educate, to empower? Like, I see how you work a room. You are in this for real. Like, you really believe in building Black wealth, right? Prioritizing that, and more so educating. What keeps that fire burning? That's the reason why I'm asking in terms of the time
Yeah.
span, because people get burnt out
Of course, of
naturally.
course, of course.
Yeah.
It's twofold for me. The first portion is like most people, right? Providing for their families. I have a beautiful family. I have a wife. I have two kids. I have a son and daughter. So just making sure that I have something there for them. And the catalyst is, you always want your significant other, you always want your kids and your family to be proud of you. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is when I look into the mirror, right? So for me, and we'll speak about this a little bit more. I have a football team called the New York Crusaders, and it's adult tackle football where we deal with young men from anywhere between the ages of 18 and 30. These are grown men. Some of them have different issues going on. Some of them, have had a plethora of issues happening. And when I look out into the world and I see Black men, we are going through so much right now, especially with things how they are politically on the federal level. We need to have resources and we need to have outlets. We are under attack, and we have been under attack since slavery, since Jim Crow, since the 50s and 60s. They've our leaders have been killed. Um, you know, just just everything that has happened, throughout the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and leading up till now. We have George Floyd's and Trayvon Martin's, right? So I think for me, when I look at this, I don't just say, hey, this is real estate and let's make this money, right? I look at this like this is a way, this is an avenue for us to be financially empowered so we can have our own institutions and we can raise our families and raise our kids in the right and correct way. So for me, it's more so than just we're going to buy this building or we're going to develop this building. It's deeper. This stuff is rooted in so much. So for example, I teach as well. And when you talk about like the fair housing, there was a point in time where as a Black person, we could not even get a mortgage. And not to say that you had no credit or you could have a good job in credit, but they redlined us where banks would draw lines in neighborhoods of color and say, we are not going to lend them. And some of the same financial institutions where we place our money in now, right? Some of these same banks would not give us a loan to buy a house. So for me, this is a never-ending battle to ensure that we are financially empowered and we are economically empowered. And the best way to do that, one of the best ways to do that, is to put our money in a tangible, physical asset that doesn't go away and builds value for generations and generations. I know I
Wow.
took a long route to answer your question,
Okay,
but that's
Pastor, listen, Bishop. No, but that's beautiful and it's well stated. You know what? Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that, with everything that you just said, do you believe that it is possible for us to maybe rebuild Black Wall Street? I know there's a lot of conversation about that, but do you think it is possible? Because so many Black folks like you that are doing it, right? That are killing the game, right? Do you think it's possible for us to rebuild Black Wall Street or to have a replica?
Yeah, yeah, definitely so, right? It's gonna take, even though we do have at this time and date, right, we have more successful Black and brown folks than what we have ever had. But one thing, we work in silos and we work independently, right? And I think you know it's a tough mantra to get over because most of the time when folks make it, they leave the neighborhood and they don't look back and they don't want to help out. And I get it. And it's over fear of I got mines and I don't want it to be taken away. Right. It's the same reason. It's funny. I used to read this book, just taking it back and Harriet Tubman. It was like a book about untold stories. And she used to sometimes come and get slaves and like, come on, let's go. And some of those slaves would say, no, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm going to tell. Right. So it's unfortunately that sometimes we have this mindset that we are there and we're comfortable and we're good. Now when we are successful, we'll take that money and we'll leave Bed-Stuy, we'll leave East New York, we'll leave Brownsville, we'll leave Canarsie, right, and go elsewhere. We'll leave Flatbush. Why not stay exactly where you are to make that impact, right? And I think that's the thing because when we take our money and we take it elsewhere, we take it out the community. And like I said, there are so many cases throughout history, whether it's the cars, whether it's redlining with real estate, whether it's the products that we didn't want to, that they didn't want us to buy. I remember back in the day, but maybe early 2090s when Timberland said, he didn't make his boots for black and brown folks. When black and brown folks were the only ones that was, you get a new pair of Timbs in Brooklyn. Like I'm good, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we concentrated our money and our financial resources in building our own, we can, but it's gonna be tough, especially now with the current administration, and they're taking us back, right? They're stripping DEI, and a lot of major companies are following suit. So while it'll be tougher, but I think now more so than ever is the time to actually do that and have our own institutions, because who knows, sis? Who knows what is going to look like right now, 2 years from now? Who knows? Right now, the tariff wars and other economic challenges that are coming down the pike, who knows what 2 years is going to look like? So the time to act is now, and I think we serve ourselves, in a good way if we do start to, like you mentioned, build that Black Wall Street out. And I think it looks like the first thing that we need to do is build financial institutions, and hospitals, right? Health is wealth, no matter what. So I think we can, and I think it starts there.
Profound. Profound. Let's switch gears a little bit. Industry insights and strategy. You are tackling real estate from a different vantage point, right? Development, right? And you work in the corporate space a lot. I want us to talk a little bit about that. How did you get into that space? And what does your day in a life look like in
No
terms of
problem.
the real estate development aspect of it?
No problem. So for me, my role is my roles have been development, property management, and asset management, right? So that's what my day looks like. And I think for me, I got into this aspect of it because when I really wanted to dive deep into real estate, and I did the traditional route. I got my real estate license, became a broker, and I said, you know what? I don't really like being a real estate agent too much. And for me, my path has been educating individuals, especially Black and brown folks that look like you and I, that there's more to real estate than just, renting an apartment and buying a home. But a lot of individuals don't know that because the only thing we see is, let me get my real estate license and that's all I know, right? But they don't know that you can be an asset manager, you can be a property manager, you can be a tenant coordinator, you can be a construction property manager, you can be a finance. There's so many avenues within real estate that it's not even funny. And a large segment of us are left out because they'll get their real estate license and they're like, man, this is tough. I ain't making no money. And they'll go back to, go get another job, and they'll leave the industry not knowing that there's so much more that you can do within the real estate industry, right? So in general, for me as a property manager, I had worked, I have my own properties I've managed, but also what I tell people is this, for my mentees and people that listen, I say double dip, meaning this. If there's a career that you want to do, right? If you want to be a real estate developer, if you want to be a real estate owner, whatever the case is, go work for a real estate developer. Learn it. Learn what they do, right? You're getting paid to learn. It's better than college, right? And what you can do, the information and skill set that you learn from watching that development company do it, you're just building what I call educational wealth, right? You're building educational wealth because you're learning and you're understanding the process. And the whole time, you can also have your own business too. So I'm a big believer in, getting your, and getting two forms of income. You can have your own business. You can be what I call an employeepreneur. And nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with being an employee somewhere. And nothing's wrong with, in addition, having your own business. And it can be done. And I think for some people, that might be the route. Some people may just want to, go the sexy route. Oh, I'm an entrepreneur, which is cool, no doubt. But I think for me, it was, I'm going to go the employeepreneur route because I want my money and I'm learning. And I'm going to take all that wealth and I'm going to apply that to my own business and grow it so I don't have to make the mistakes of if I'm starting from scratch on my own.
Top three, I agree. Top three development companies right now in New York City. Top three. Oh, it doesn't have to be New York, it could be nationwide. That people can probably even think to, apply for jobs in that
Gotcha.
space.
So perfect. So I'll give you some. So I'm big in the as of now, most of my career has been in the commercial space, open air shopping centers, grocery anchor shopping centers. So you have Brookfield. Brookfield is a REIT, is a publicly traded company. They have something along the West Side Highway, that mall. My former company, Kimco Realty, same thing, grocery anchored. And I was at RPAI, which is now Kite Realty. So they do have a couple assets, here in the city as well. So what they do, they own open air shopping centers, and they build and they manage. So those are some companies that folks could apply for, right? You can go to LinkedIn, and they're always hiring. You have Mace Rich, which is a company that owns the Kings Plaza shopping center, right? So these are companies that always have jobs, whether it's a leasing coordinator, a property manager, an asset manager. Actually, I gave you four. So those are companies that you can start with and start to apply for different jobs there too.
Awesome. What about Simon Outlet? Like, have you ever worked with them, or
Yeah,
because they?
Simon. Yeah, I've never worked there, but they're large, right?
Yeah.
They're one of the largest in the country. They own centers and shopping centers all around the world. So they're one of the big players as well, and they're a REIT, which is a real estate investment trust. So you can find them publicly traded. If you want to, and here's the cool thing: if you want to own a piece of those companies, you can buy shares in that company as well. Some of these companies pay dividends. And the cool thing is about some of these companies, depending on what you negotiate when you apply for those jobs, what they may not pay you in salary, you can make up in shares, right? So you can have that. Put it this way: when some of these CEOs and some of these executives, they're they have millions in compensation. Most of that is through shares in the company that they buy and sell. When you're in some of these positions, some of these companies will give you, after like 5 or 10 years, they will give you, here's $15,000 worth of shares. And then at that time, you're fully vested. You can take that and you can sell that. And here's why I'm big on being an employeepreneur, because you can use your 401k, your whatever in retirement investment vehicle that you have. You can use that, and many people have, right? Whether you work for the city or whether you're a police officer, MTA, whatever it is, you can use that to purchase a piece of real estate, right? And whether it's your main home or an investment property. So that's why I'm big on leveraging that daytime job or that regular job into your own endeavors, business wise, especially if it's going to be in real estate.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
there are a plethora of other companies, RXR, you have, shipping management, you have, First Service, you have so many other companies that are property managers and doing development. If you want to go into kind of like the black and brown sector, you have DeBar Development, which is, Dewana Williams, which is, and you have NIRAC. So I'm also part of NIRAC, which is the New York Real Estate Chamber. And it is a conglomerate and a grouping of some of the most prolific black and brown developers in New York City, right? And they are doing ground up. You have Craig Livingston from Exact Capital, who's doing some amazing stuff. These guys are building hotels and doing some real good stuff that black and brown folks can be really proud of.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. So, switching gears a little bit, being that you're already in this space, what are some trends that you're watching right now in the commercial space or residential in terms of real estate or development? What are some trends that you're paying attention to?
So I'm big on education, and I'm always looking at which companies are hiring, right? So I'm looking at that aspect of it, and I'm also looking at things from a federal level. So even though a lot of companies haven't said it, when our current president became in office and they started repealing some of the DEI stuff, even though they may not have been as public as some of the major Fortune 500 companies, but a lot of other companies started repealing some of their DEI stuff. Um, so I look at that happens, trends, and I look at that and I compare it to hiring, right? Where's the hiring going? And specifically in the Northeast region. And I'll say this, from the trend that I'm looking at, while there's still hiring that's happening, right? Because regardless of anything, in good times and bad times, real estate needs to still be managed. And people think about, oh, the space is vacant, this building is vacant. There still needs to be a property or asset manager to manage those vacancies, right? Now, obviously, no one wants a completely vacant space, but no matter what, and the reason why I love property management because it's always needed. So I'm always looking at the job trends. I'm always looking at economics from a federal level and local level to see how that is impacting the local job market in terms of real estate. And I try to do the same thing in regards to brokerage too, even though it's a bit different when you're a real estate agent because you're strictly commission based. But I am a member of the Bed-Stuy Real Estate Board, which is a NARAB member, which is for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. A quick plug for that. NARAB was formed because Black and brown real estate professionals couldn't join the National Association of Realtors. We couldn't join. So we had to form our own organization, in order to make sure that we still have or we're still keeping the needs and wishes and thoughts of Black and brown real estate professionals, right? So anyway, so I'm always looking at that, and I'm always looking at to see how is the job market doing, and I look at the major companies that are hiring in, like you said, Brookfield, Simon, the Kimcos, the Kites. Are they hiring? And right now they are, right? It may not be for those pristine positions for, vice presidents and things of that nature, but they are still hiring, which is good. That may change in the next couple months, contingent on what's happening and contingent on what happens with the commercial sector. But I don't foresee there being a drop off in hiring in that market because I think that larger companies are going to start to just reposition some of the larger spaces. Party City filed for bankruptcy not too long ago. One of my last things was moving Party City out at one of our Staten Island sites. And you're talking about, a large footprint, 20,000, 15, 20,000 square feet. What is a landlord to do with that? They have to reposition that, so they have to reposition that. Maybe they'll divide it in half, divide it in thirds or fourths, and put smaller tenants in there. So while that's happening, that's construction that's taking place, right? So there has to be a project manager, construction company. So right now, I would say trend wise, folks are hiring. These companies are still hiring. I'm just not sure how that's going to look in the next couple of months, especially as our economy starts to really grab a hold of what's happening on the national and international level in regards to politics and tariffs.
I'm listening to you talk and I'm just amazed at how your mind works. You're so well informed and so knowledgeable. Where does that knowledge come from? What what is your morning routine? Like, give us a quick overview. What
Yeah,
are we
yeah.
doing to capitalize all that information?
You know what's interesting? So it's funny because I read a lot. I have my library. If I can show you I read a lot. And the last, and not Kindle books, so I need a hard physical book, right? The feeling that you get once you read that last page and you close it, you're like, it feels great. So I read a lot. For me, I try to tackle three goals throughout the day. I am huge in physical health. And the reason why is because, in 30s and 40s, is where I've seen a lot of people in my age bracket start to their health will dwindle. When you see them, you're like, wow. So I'm big on health. So I'll get up and I'll go to the gym and
What
I'll
time are we getting up?
so I do get up early. I try to get up very early. So I either get up between 4 and 4:30 a.m.
That's what I'm
I,
trying to get. I'm
I
trying
have
to get
to
our listeners.
I know I have to get up early because at that time, well, if the baby ain't crying, because I have 11-month-old at home, so if the baby ain't crying, then I'm getting up. But I try to get up early and I try to work out. After that, I have to read. I have to read. I have to read a book. So right now, I'm reading a book called The First 90 Days, and it's about job transition. When you're transitioning, what do you have to do to be successful in a new role? And now, so I'm in a new role. I'm the director of property management and real estate training. So I'm in a leadership role, right? So I have to lead. And the book right now is talking about how can you get short wins so people can trust you, right? So it's about those small wins. What small wins can I have? What projects can I do where people can say, you know what? Yeah, this guy is cool, right? Let me follow him, because if you don't get those small wins in a short amount of time, then trust kind of dwindles and you start to have a hard time. So I'm reading that book, and then I have I use OneNote a lot, and what I'll do, I'll look through the day and I'll put in my tasks. I used to do like 10 tasks throughout the day, but then it got overbearing. So I do 3 tasks. I do 3, and I break it down into family, meaning I have to call a distant family member that day, whether it's an aunt, cousin, or text or something. Have to do that. Personal. So in addition to reading that book, I also want to build skills. So right now, I am building skills in regards to kind of like wound care and first aid, right? So just reading about that. So if stuff happens, at least you can know what to do. And then also, I mentioned physical health too. So I'm big on that. I'm big on running and lifting weights and just trying to stay healthy. And I played football for a long time, so my workouts are different, right? I'm not trying to be 240 pounds and benching 365 anymore. But I think for now is making sure my endurance and make sure I have strength. So I'm big on that. But yeah, that's my routine. And I used to work. I used to work so much nonstop. Now I try to make sure that I stop working at a certain time and I spend time with my family. That's big. That's everything, and that's the stuff that really refuels me and charges me. But I'll tell people get up early. There's this book called The 5 a.m. Club, and it breaks down your schedule, and it is amazing. When you wake up early, I always feel great. Early, 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 get it done, get it out the way, and let the day go.
I love that. I love that. And we're going to talk about faith, the intersection of faith and family in a minute. But I wanted our listeners to also understand opportunities in the commercial development space. So let's talk a little bit about managing risk, right? Some of the challenges and lessons you've learned. How do you manage risk in your industry where so much is unpredictable? For example, the government, the city, the laws, right? The municipalities. How are you managing those risks? And do you have a team to
Yeah,
assist you?
yeah, you have so I used to try to do things on my own all the time, and I've learned that you have to have a team. And now I think things are becoming even easier with AI. I'm like Will Smith and iRobot. I think the robots are going to come for us and take us over, right? So I'm like, I don't want none of that, right? But I started out in chat using Chat GPT. I'm like, that thing ain't so bad, and it's not like it's a terrible AI. Basically, it helps you with your thoughts. It's on the internet anyway. It just pulls everything together, which is pretty cool. Anything more than that, no. But in regards to managing risk, right, you have to understand your market. That's the first thing. So if you want to, let's say you want to buy, you want to fix and flip, or you want to whatever it is in real estate that you want to do, wholesale, whatever it is, you have to understand your market and look at so each individual market has different factors. So for example, if you're doing something in New York City, the DOB fire department will be down your neck about every single little thing. Good God. Permits. We had a shopping center. We have shopping center. Previously at my former employer, we had shopping center in Staten Island, and we were getting hit every day, trash, sanitation. Your alarm will go off. The fire department, they come out, they issue $100 violation, right? So you have to understand what the local municipalities are doing. And then above all, your numbers have to make sense. And I tell people, and for me, I didn't like math until the end of my college career. So now understanding what your NOI is, which is your net operating income, and understand what your cash on cash return is. If you want to make a property, you have to understand what the DCR is, which is your debt coverage ratio. So understanding these metrics and understanding these formulas first will really help, right? So and I know people will just, oh, that looks like a good property, and then just purchase it, and the next thing you know, they're underwater because they just didn't do the numbers. Even though the numbers doesn't tell the whole story all the time, but guaranteed if the numbers make sense, you will have at least a decent project. That's if you're purchasing. Um, Now, if we're doing stuff such as we did a roof repair, at a property before, and it was like a $4 million roof repair because we had a couple of change orders. Stuff happens, right? You start out with a budget, and then you have to do change orders because when they opened up the roof, the decking to the whole shopping center was completely rotten. I'm like, oh my goodness, nobody expected that. So, you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to, understand what those risks are moving forward. Now, that was like one of my first major roofing projects. Now, whenever I do a major roof project, I'm like, all right, the metal decking, right? And people may not understand what these items are, but if you're doing a large commercial roof project, understand that these roofs are old. You have to do asbestos, right? See if that's still there. You have to do that testing and look for that metal decking. If it was built in a certain year, guaranteed that that metal decking is probably rotted. Now you have to incorporate that expense into your overall project, and now you have a number. If the number don't make sense, maybe you have to do a sectional, right? But those risks from local politics, local municipalities, and your numbers will give you a really good perspective of what your risk factors are, and they'll tell you if a deal is a yay or a nay.
I love that. And Tayon, to your point, I wanted to ask you, thank you for that information. Have you heard recently of the news in the Dominican Republic with the nightclub that collapsed? The roof.
Yes,
What
people
are
were
your thoughts
killed,
on?
people were hurt.
Yes, over 200, right? What
Yep.
are your thoughts on that? What do you think
Yeah.
was the flaw in that whole development for the most part?
Yeah, the first thing that you have to, the first thing that that my mind went to, I'm like, who the hell is the property manager for that building, right? Um, so here's the thing, for roofs and infrastructure stuff, you have to, once we purchase a building, once I purchase a building, you get a roof inspection, and there are a couple companies like RCS, which is a national company that we use, and they'll do a roof report. They have, they'll give you a heat report of, and they'll kind of itemize the condition that the roof is in. You have to take that report and, put that into a CapEx 5-year plan. CapEx means capital expenditure. You put that into a 5-year plan. In certain times, it could be the whole roof could be, done, or maybe certain sections of it, depending on how the roof structure is. At the end of the day, that should not have happened. Again, I didn't dig too much deeper into the condition of the roof, but I'm pretty sure it didn't happen like that. It didn't get like that yesterday, or even last year, or even 2 3 years ago, right? Um, most of the time that stuff happens over years of neglect. That's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate that people not only got hurt, but people lost their lives in that. And again, that whoever owns it is going to be, up Sugar Honey Iced Tea Creek, right? Because heads are going to roll, and they should. If you have an asset, you need to manage that asset correctly.
Yeah. What are some of the cities that you're paying attention to right now
So
or
yeah,
markets that
here's the thing.
excites you?
It's funny. So here's a market. So I'm big on the Midwest because I live there, spend a lot of time there. So I'm big on the Midwest. The Midwest, and I'm not sure. Um, it's still good, but it's went up drastically. So the Kansas City area was a great market, right? Overland Park area. Just so many different places there. When Taylor Swift came to town, right, and her and Travis Kelce started dating, property values went up, right? So you have to look at that kind of stuff. So but that's always a good market. The Midwest, is always for me. The Kansas City area has always been a good market, depending on where you are. Places in Missouri, St. Louis, is hit or miss. There I know it. St. Louis is hit or miss. It can be very rough there. Believe you me, I know. It be rough. Could be rough there. Um, Chicago, the outskirts of some place in Chicago is really nice still. Hit or miss. I was just there not too long ago and kind of driving in the area. I'm like, man, where's they still have a lot to go, right? They still have a lot to do in Chicago. But some cities that are closer to here, I like, I like Pennsylvania. I like the Lancaster area, which is, I have family there. So I'm there constantly. I think that area is really great. Upstate New York, you have like Middletown, New York, which is also great as well. So you have a couple pockets of
Yeah.
different areas that, again, I personally like areas that are no more than 2 to 3 hours from where I am. Boston, and just on the outskirts of Boston. Worcester is hit and miss there too. So there are a lot of good markets that are still there. You just have to do your research and see what you like. I have a cousin who's heavily in Connecticut as well, and she likes it. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, well, let's talk a little bit as we kind of wrap up everything. Let's talk a little bit about red flags and green flags as it pertains to property development. What are some red flags that you may have experienced, or some deals that look good on paper, but it really wasn't? What were the red flags and what are some green flags for newly budding property development enthusiasts? So
Perfect.
give
So
me
I'll
some green and red.
perfect. So I'll break this down into two sections because something that I did want to get into. So I'll break this down into your question, into if you're doing your own deals, what does that look like? And then for any person looking to enter into a company, right? And work, what are some red flags and green flags that you look for within a company? So I'll say, red flags within a deal. And I tell people you have to and the reason why I can say this because I wasn't, you have to have knowledge of how building systems work. You have to understand plumbing, you have to understand HVAC, you have to understand electrical work. And I'm not saying you have to be an expert in it. I'm not an expert, but you have to understand some structural stuff, and you have to understand how those building systems work because that stuff can come back to bite you in the rear. So those are always red flags for me. Um, obviously, if you have major issues, and residential would be different than commercial. Commercial, you have HVAC units on top, and mostly lease-wise, the commercial tenants are normally responsible for the HVAC during their tenure. Now, if they vacate and you're getting a new tenant in, they're going to most likely require that commercial landlord to bring those units so they're in working condition. Plenty of time. They was, oh yeah, okay. And then you go in and you get a number from a vendor, and they're like, oh, it's gonna be $70,000. Like, what? And the HVAC unit was completely shot. Heating and cooling is so important because that's as a property manager, that's where you get most of your complaints when a tenant moves in. I've seen structural stuff. You have to stay on your contractors. I've seen people do stuff where they pave over your paver, they pave over gas line and pave over grease traps, and it becomes a huge issue. So red flags for me is, and that doesn't matter whether a building is new or old, you have to look at the quality of the work that was done.
Mhm.
That's always a red flag for me. And for example, I had an issue with some grease traps for some commercial a shopping mall that we had. There's a bunch of food tenants, and the grease kept backing up to all the tenants. And when we really, and end of the day, when we really got
Say
down
that
to
again. What was the issue?
their grease traps, right? Their grease traps were backing up. So they had backing up happening in their commercial space, in the kitchen, in the bathroom. Grease was coming up through their piping. Um, and lo and behold, the pipes weren't pitched right, and the grease traps just weren't done correctly. So that is major because guess what? Grease trap could be underground, and now you have to dig up the concrete and lay down the grease trap. That's a six-figure job.
Right.
So these are things that I didn't know before, but now the property manager, asset manager, that's what I'm looking at. So if I'm about to purchase a shopping center, I'm going down to each food tenant and ask them, hey, how's your drainage? And they're like, oh, it's fine. We've never had backups. And great. But it's like, yeah, we get backups every now and again. For me, that's a red flag because that means that something somewhere, the drainage isn't draining correctly. Maybe the grease tank isn't big enough. I don't know, but that does raise a red flag for me. So
Green
those
flags. Give us two green flags really quick.
a green flag for development is when you ask if you're about to purchase something. I'm talking about shopping centers. If you go around to the tenants and even residential, if you go around to the tenants, and even though it you don't hear it a lot, they have good things to say about the previous owner or the previous property management company. You don't hear that often. Another green flag is records. If you're purchasing something and that former owner or former landlord or whoever has adequate records that they can hand over to you, that's a green flag because it just makes things so much easier. How many times that somebody has purchased a building, purchased a property, and records are kind of like all over the place. So those are definitely some green flags too.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. Development and philosophy. Let's talk a little bit about philosophy, and which I know this is a really great conversation that we can segue into because you're big on that. How do you approach balancing profitability with community impact? That's a big conversation right now in New York, as you know, with all the different real estate laws that's happening. How do you maintain the two?
Perfect. And no, that's a great question. I think for me that's something that's I've thought about my whole career, especially as I've worked with large real estate investment trusts. Obviously, they are beholden upon their shareholders, right? At the end of the day, they have to show profitability. Um, but then another part of me, well, all of me, I'm going to say, is big on community, right? I was on my community board in Bed-Stuy for double-digit years, NAACP, groups like 500 Men Making a Difference, the list goes on. I love my community, but we also have to make a profit as well too. I think I do think that both can be done. And I think that there just has to be a policy within the company that actually speaks to that. And people have to really, really care about that. And I'm not talking about every year a company, you go to a soup kitchen and you get stuff done. That's cool and it looks good. And a lot of companies do that just so they can check off something on the ESG chat tracker. Just because, yeah, shareholders, look, some of our employees came out, and went to a soup kitchen and we need to be in the community for real. We need to be at the homeless shelters. We need to be at Bedford and Atlantic, going to the men's shelter, right? We need to be in it because I think that's where. And again, you cannot do community impact one time a year, right? Most companies will have, hey, you get 4 days, three or 4 days off for the year. No, community impact, it has to be in your heart. It has to be in here, right? And it's something that's always that you always have to do. Well, so I do think that when you manage assets, when you do developments, going down to the community boards helps out, right? Going down to local stakeholders and at least sitting with them, sitting with the tenants. If you are a property manager, sitting with the tenants, opening your spaces up. If you have community space, opening up your space up for local groups to do things, right? Most of the people are like, no, if they ain't paying no rent, we ain't doing nothing, right? So I think that you have to have a mindset, or your company or whoever you report to they have to have the willingness to actually do that and not just check off a box at the end of the year that they can give to their shareholders that they've done something.
How
Um,
does how does that how does that I love that. How does that equate to profitability? Where does the profitability aspect comes into play? Just real quick.
yeah, of course. So I think that and this is the other portion of it. I think people always, if you are, a developer, right? Let's say you're an individual investor, individual developer. People always want to invest in something that they feel good about, right? And I've learned that. So, for example, people will give you it tells them a compelling story, especially if it's heartfelt. So if you're raising capital, actually there's an event tonight that I was supposed to be at. I'm here with you. That people, it was a capital event where you're raising capital. And if you're going to somebody and you're pitching them, right, about this new development, this new project or something that you're doing, and they're looking at the numbers and they're like, yeah, the numbers look good, okay. But if you can say the numbers look good, and if you can tell them all the stuff that you've done in the community, you donated to teams and you've done different things. For example, and I'm going to use him as a good buddy of mine. His name is Osei Ruby. He owns national. He's a title guy. You may know him. Something that I didn't know about him, and I think he just was in the Real Deal, one of these articles where he hit $2 billion in work, or 3 billion, some crazy number. Since he's been around for 10 years, which is phenomenal. I called him. I'm like, man, this is dope. Man, drinks on you, right? But one thing that I didn't know about him was he set up a scholarship fund, right, for kids that are going to HBCUs. And I think I'm not sure how much he places in that scholarship fund, but he places a significant amount in there from the deals that he does to ensure that kids are getting the opportunity to go to college and study real estate and do what it is that they need to do. Think about that pipeline, right? So
Yes.
you're sending kids through there. 4 years goes by really quickly. They're going to come out of there and they come work for, hey, or they could be involved in the real estate industry. But even when you're pitching a project, you can say, hey, developer, investor, this is where your money's going. we're not just faking it. We're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're sending young Black and brown men to college.
Man, you're doing it, man. I'm so happy that you're our first guest for the year. You're our first guest. Yes, I'm telling you, and I'm so happy I made that decision because I'm
Thank
just smiling and cheesing because you're saying things that make so much sense and it's so true. It is so true. I love that. And thank you for being here. I know you said you had another engagement. I appreciate that.
Of course, of course.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, we're gonna wrap up, and I definitely want to talk about faith in a little bit, but I want to also talk about as we wrap up with the whole commercial development and so forth, legacy and advice. Legacy and advice. You know, this podcast talks a lot about business and so forth, but it also has conversations about legacy. So, as we talk about that, what impact do you hope your projects have on the communities they serve? And what is Tayan's legacy? What does that look like?
Perfect. So, I think for me here in the community, born and raised in Best Buy. My family's here. Well, some of my family here, some of them moved away. Even for us, we still have property there. But I'm a Brooklyn guy, so I think for me, when it's all said and done, and this is something that I thought about before, the reason why I educate and the reason why I do teach and the reason why I focus on Black and brown men is because that is the legacy that I want, right? I want to be able to give somebody the gift of understanding real estate, how to get a deal done, or how to get a job in real estate, and how to walk it, how to talk it, how to be it. So when I'm old, when I'm in a nursing home, and they'll come by and they'll say, "Man, Ty, you was all right, thank you." And I think the best thing that we can do is to teach, is to pass it on. And I have kids of my own now. I have young kids. My daughter's 11 months, my son is 5, and I plan on doing the same thing to them. Right? It is bestowing knowledge on them. And don't get me wrong, right? Physical assets are great. You can have a fly ride, you can have different toys and different things, right? But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you have impacted somebody enough where even after you're gone, the lessons that they've bestowed upon you are still teachable. And I think we need to do a better job of that as Black and brown folks. There are families here that have what's called old money. There are families here in America and in Europe, they have old money that great granddad started from oil wells or slavery days or whatever it was, right? And I think we need to start building more of that. So I think 100 or 200 years from now, will I be remembered? So
Mm.
that is my. I don't want to be remembered just 20 years from now, because hopefully, or just after I'm gone, because that's my direct descendants. They have had interaction with me, so yeah, I'll be remembered. But can I be remembered down the line of my family line and my legacy of family members who did not interact with me,
Mm.
right? And that's why it's important for us to build assets, protect those assets. That's a whole other story, estates and wills and things of that nature. But that's why it's important for us to build assets, and protect those assets as much as we can, but leave an educational legacy as well too. So that's what we're trying to do.
I love
What's
that.
the other part of the question?
No, you did it. You answered it. You answered it very well. People that are listening, we have listeners literally around the country and overseas. They are listening to you talk. How can they get into commercial or development? What are the steps really quickly? What are some steps that they can tap into? Because we want to make sure that we are providing value, right?
Of course, of course,
We
of course.
are at crossroads in our economy. People are struggling financially. What can you say? How can someone get started and be the next Tyon Anthony?
Mhm. So what I'll say is this: this is so real estate is an action sport, right? This is not something that you can sit on the sideline and do. Wherever you are, whether you're in Oklahoma, whether you're in Kansas City, California, Seattle, wherever you are, right? The first thing you need to do is go somewhere, right? You need to network and you need to know people. And not just in an, and I don't want to sound cliche, and I think for me, because I like going places and I like to build with people and I like to connect. I'm sure you know that, right? But not just going someplace or showing up to an event and say, "Hey, my name is Joe Schmo. What do you do for a living?" you have to build real authentic relationships with people. Most of the time nowadays, when I network, I don't even ask people really what they do because I want to know who that person is. And that's how you build an authentic relationship. When people come to me, hey, my name is Joe. What's your name and what company are you from? Sometimes, and here's the thing. Here's how you know. And I read this book. I told you I'm big into reading. Um, and this author said something that really stuck to me. They said people will ask you your job title so they can know what amount of wealth or emphasis to place on you. And
Come
that
on,
always stuck
somebody.
to me. And that stuck to me. So I remember a couple times, right? Even after I closed a couple deals, I went someplace and they said, "Hey, what do you do?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm a janitor, whatever the case is." Or they were like, oh, "Okay." Person never came back.
Yeah.
Person never came back to me, right? And that's fine. But there are places that I go sometimes, and you've ever been somewhere where you hit it off with somebody and y'all just talking and you forgot, you didn't even ask them what they do. You just vibe with that person. I think for the most part, for anybody getting started in this business, just go out to networking events and build authentic relationships, right? You have to build authentic relationships. I'm big into conferences and seminars. I love to pack my little bags and go to a conference and go to a seminar. I go up to Albany every year for Black Caucus. I'm going to DC this year for the Black Caucus there. Brandon Turner he has a conference down in Dallas, Texas. I love going to conferences. I love going to networking events. I just love it because I love meeting new people and see what people are doing. And I love to have relationships and connections in different parts of the country. So I would say the first thing that you want to do is, if you're looking to get in this, you need to go out and go network. And then on top of that, you need to have a CRM, right? That's how you manage those contacts. I use Pipedrive. It's inexpensive and it's great. And I know you said you want to bring value, so I'm telling you exactly what I do. And every time I get a name or a number, I forget it and I put it into Pipedrive because there it is, and ain't no way in hell I'm going to remember all these folks. So
Yeah.
when you network with people, you get the information and you put it into Pipedrive, and it'll remind you for birthdays and holidays and whatever information you get about people, you know, put it into there. So one thing, so Robert Refkin, right? He is the CEO of Compass. Compass is now the largest brokerage damn near in the world. A mentor of mine remembered him from, I think he worked at JP Morgan, something like that way back in the day. And they said what he would do, and and I know Brian, I have to text him. I know Robert Refkin, I have to text him this too. My mentor said that he knew that Robert was going to be phenomenal because at every Christmas he would write handwritten notes to everybody in his department individually. And it's
Wow.
those small things that really kind of makes the difference, right? So I would say if you're getting started in this, and I know it's not industry specific, because industry specific stuff will come with knowledge and experience, learning about an HVAC, but people forget the people stuff that you need to build authentic relationships. So if you want to get started in this business, go to real estate networking events, develop get a CRM. You don't have to use Pipedrive. You have MailChimp and you have, others that people use, and learn the ability. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Great book.
Mm.
Simple, straightforward, great book. Guaranteed if you do those three things, you'll be successful in damn any career you pick.
Mm. I love that. Wow. Tyan Anthony, man, it's a pleasure having you. Thank you for the gems. As we wrap up, you're a man of faith. How has your faith and your family balanced you out? And I think you alluded to that earlier, but like, as we end this, how imperative it is to be a person of purpose. And can you be still in the hustle and in the grind and still want to have a family? Like, how do you
Yes.
balance it all out?
It's right. It's interesting. So I met my wife a while ago when I first came back to New York. I was single. I was ready to hit the town. I was like, I'm single, man. Just finished playing football. I'm about to be out of here. But then I met her and all that changed, right? So it's interesting because she is a person of faith and her family is. And I grew up in the church, right? Old school Brooklyn. My grandmother was dragging me to Brooklyn Tabernacle, right? Every Sunday I did Sunday school and everything. And my cousin, we went to Antioch right along Fulton Street and Sunday school. I used to go to Lancaster, same thing, right? So it's been around me my whole life. And I think more so than anything, what I'll say is this, and this is my own personal opinion, right? And I know people might be, oh no, you crazy. I think the main thing that we have to think about in life is not, I have to choose this specific path to make it, but you have to live your life in the best possible way as you can and be impactful. Make sure that you have integrity and making sure that you're doing what you need to do for yourself and for your family. Um, and I think for that, man, that's all we can ask for at the end of the day, right? There are so many paths, there are so many different religions and so many different, ways. You have the Quran, you have the Bible, you have so many different books that people read, and all of them are great, and all of them are great, and all of them are rooted in facts and foundation. So I think for me, you know, what I do, I try to teach my son and my daughter, she's only 11 months, that more than anything, we have to be good. We have to believe. We pray. So we make sure. And actually, I can't take credit for this. My wife, she makes sure that we pray every single night as a family. So that's one thing that we do. So when we put our son to sleep, my son now, sometimes I'll fall asleep up to him like, Daddy, wake up, we didn't pray yet. I'm like, all right, yeah, let's pray, let's pray, right? So, and she instilled that in him because she's big on that, and we'll pray. And what we do, each of us will say a prayer. So he'll start first, then my wife will start go second, and either I go third or something like that. But we all gather up as a family. We do this a lot,
Yeah.
almost every night, and it's something special. And I think it's important to to build that bond. So, it's important. One thing I will
Yes.
say as a last word, I know we got to wrap up soon. As a project for all your listeners, because I recently did this, and I heard it from somebody else that is a CEO of a Fortune 500. I implore all your listeners to build their circle of influence. What does that mean? Take 10 people that are your advocates, but 10 people that are going to advocate for you, and be your sponsor. And that means advocate for you even in rooms that you're not in, right? Take those 10 people and write 10 people down on that. And it took me a while because I'm like, man, but they can't just be your cousin Joe who ain't doing nothing. They got to be people of influence, people that have made it in their own personal careers. Write those 10 people down, right? And once you get that list, even if it's not 10, it could be five, right? And you could, take the time throughout the next couple of years to build out those 10 and start nurturing those relationships, whether it's a phone call, whether it's going out to lunch, because the people that are going to advocate for you when you're not in those same rooms, those are the people that's in your corner, and those folks are going to help you get to where you need to be. That's important. I call it the top 10 circle of influence.
Wow, man. Thank you. Wow. Any last words?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was my last words. Just
When are you coming out with your book? What's
I,
next? Like, merch. What we doing?
I know I'm just it's interesting, man. You live life, and I say this. It's funny because when I was 22, I thought I knew everything, but you can tell me nothing. But as I am now, I understand that what wisdom is. It's living life, and you cannot have wisdom unless you've been through some sugar honey iced tea, and you have to go through it, and you have to learn from those experiences, whether it's real estate, whether it's personal, any of that. So I think just making sure that we live life a little bit, and we learn from all the experiences that we go through. And listen, I could talk to you for days about Black men in corporate America and what we're going through, but I'm gonna get off my Huey Newton. I ain't gonna get on my Huey Newton tonight. You know what I'm saying? I just finished reading the origination of the Black Panther Party, so I don't wanna
Right.
beat my Huey Newton drum too much, but it's just so much happening out there for Black and brown men and women, right, too, and Black and brown women, that it's interesting. It's an interesting mix, especially about what's about to come down the pipes.
No, I appreciate it. We're gonna have a part two. We definitely going to invite you back. How can the people follow you online? How can folks, I know you have a mentorship group as well. How can people stay connected to you?
No problem. So I am very, 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 very active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my favorite. I'll do Facebook and I'll do Instagram a little bit, but LinkedIn has been everything for me. So I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. That is the business. It kills me. And one thing, our Black and brown men, we have to get active on LinkedIn as well. Forget posting, on, Facebook and Instagram and stuff, but LinkedIn is where you make those business connections. So LinkedIn, Tywan Anthony, Instagram, Tywan Anthony, Facebook, everything is Tywan Anthony, first and last name, Tywan, last name Anthony, on all those social media outlets. But I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. So you can always find me there.
And of course, we are going to share that information. We want to thank you so much, Tyan, for being a part of our podcast series. You're our first guest, and we are just honored. We are honored to just share this space with you. See you guys. You're listening to the Chop It Up podcast.
Yes.
We are so happy. This is the wrap up for today's episode of Chop It Up Podcast. A big thanks again for our guests for dropping serious knowledge on
Of
the
course,
game of
anytime.
real estate development. Listen, you guys, if you enjoy, and I know you did, if you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe on our YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a review. If you're listening on Spotify,
Mhm.
leave us a review. And of course, please share this episode with someone who's ready to build big. Catch you guys
Important.
on the next time. Same vibe, new gems. Until then, keep chopping it up. Bye, you guys.
Take care. Good night.